This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Lynx got another win last night. They're undefeated and are back in action this Sunday when they take on Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, 3 p.m. You can catch that game right here on The Fan and hear every game this season on the Timberwolves and Lynx channel on the free iHeartRadio app, thanks to RBC Wealth Management.
Not all good again for your Minnesota Twins, eh? Pablo Lopez injured. And I don't know if he's yet been put any kind of the injury list, but it is, I'm assuming that he is going to miss a few starts. They're calling it a strained latimus muscle in the back of his pitching shoulder.
Yep.
You familiar with the latimus muscle?
Well, I know about lat pull-downs.
Strained latimus muscle.
Yeah.
In the back of his pitching shoulder. So, because we dominated the Athletics again, right? Another 10 runs.
Yep.
10-3. And, again, I know we're not the only team that gets injuries, right? I mean, we're more fixated on it because it's the local team. But it does seem stunning, does it not? That we... anytime we seem to get any kind of momentum, then we've got somebody else to strain another muscle or, might miss time or concussion or whatever the case may be. And so now we have to fill in. Allegedly, we've got options, minor league options.
Sounds like Festa has been scratched from his AAA start. Okay. So the theory is he's coming up.
He's going to be the guy. Now, do we know, have you read anything about how long they were estimating on Pablo, how long he might be out?
No, I haven't seen anything there. They were going to have some more imaging today, and then they'd have a better idea. But it's still a little early West Coast time. No one's I bet people are trickling into the park. So I'm guessing the next few hours we get something.
He's actually, the quote from Pablo is relief. I guess on the basis of a little bit
that
of
he
relief.
Pulled it.
Obviously, you don't want to hear anything arm-related, shoulder-related, but it's also relief that I never felt like a big pop or anything, which I feel like that's what could have happened had I been a little more stubborn and tried to pitch.
Yeah, I think he's relieved that he made the right call not to be a tough guy.
Pull the plug before,
yeah. Because he said he had that internal dialogue, too. Do I try to pitch through this when it was, I think, going into the 5th or 6th inning when he was warming up and he felt it? And do I be tough guy? Do I just say, no big deal?
Now he runs the risk of being soft. Accused of being soft. He didn't gut it out.
But how long might he have been on the injured list then?
Might have completely blown it out, yeah. So, not helpful at all. By the way, somebody suggested maybe... How about, is there any chance we're going to see Tibbs in a broadcast booth? Have we ever seen in the years he was not coaching? I don't know if he ever did games. Him ever doing games or even, I don't remember him doing studio stuff. Has he?
Yes, he did a lot of ESPN stuff.
Oh, that's right. What am I talking about?
He did a lot of stuff with Greeny.
You're right, he did.
So,
yeah.
I think that's probably what he would do. He lives in New York. He might be able to commentate on the finals for ESPN. That's where he lives.
Yeah,
just shoot down to Pier 17 or wherever they do that show. Malone did it. Malone's probably going to be working in some capacity. So, yeah, I don't know about actual games. I don't know if that's the best spot for him, but he did a ton of TV stuff in the interim between here and there.
You mentioned the Lynx. Where the roar for 44 continues. We're now 8-0.
Yes, Nafisa Collier, the Western Conference Player of the Month. That was named today.
To 65, and now she's the runaway MVP favorite right now, according to the odds makers.
I think she is, yeah. She's playing great. She does everything.
Is Reeve happy yet or not? Because Reeve tends to not want to be happy.
Yeah, she sounded fairly happy. I was listening to the pregame show on the way home last night. She sounded fairly happy in the pregame interview with Sloan Martin, but yeah, she's always got a few things that are nagging that she wants to clean up, which is why they win, probably.
Yeah, that's probably true. Has anybody brought up the Roar for 44 with Cheryl yet?
I haven't seen it.
Has Youngblood brought that up yet?
Didn't we do that with her one time?
We did, actually.
Yeah,
we did.
She wasn't ready to embrace it.
No, I mean, she didn't. I mean, I think she got the bit a little bit, but yeah.
That was back in like the 32 days, back when they only played 30 or 32 games.
We might need a sounder, especially if they keep winning. Because, I mean, how many games can we get to before it really gets interesting? I haven't checked our schedule, so I have absolutely no idea.
Don't you have to probably get to like the halfway point?
Probably, yes.
Win 22 or something?
To really go anywhere?
If you get through that 3-game stretch against New York,
that's late, right?
That's in August.
That's much later, yeah.
That's probably a little unrealistic.
Let me get to some texts here before we prepare for Russo Radio. It's a players' league, and the owners did to themselves the contracts they gave out to the players. Players make 3 times the coaches, 3 times what the coaches do. They have the power. Yeah, but teams and general managers and owners still also have the power, if they want to use it, that this coach ain't going anywhere, right? I mean, you really can do it that way if you're steadfast and strong in the approach that you take, and you're not convinced that the coach is the problem. Say, all right, well, we're gonna work through a couple things. We might tweak the roster a little bit. We might make a couple of changes there. So, yeah, there's no question that and certainly in terms of pro basketball, players have an immense amount of power, but that doesn't mean you have to cede even more of it if you're running the team, right? And you're convinced that you think you have the right coach, or you want to give this coach a longer, period of time to figure out whether this is the right guy or the wrong guy.
In the NBA, too, I think it's going to be harder for players to really dictate stuff because of how difficult it is becoming to make trades, to sign players. To a larger point, that also is why I think there's more and more belief that the get 2 superstars model is dying. That you're even for that very same reason, that it's going to be more. You could say, to a certain extent, the Oklahoma City way and the Pacers way, a depth, options, play a lot of different ways, and to worry and not, that we can now make runs without necessarily having 2 established superstars. Right now, Oklahoma City, obviously, their one is a superstar as far as I'm concerned, and Williams is. I think he was already an all-star. Yeah, he's a good player. He's budding.
He may be heading that right direction.
And we know about Chet.
And we know about Holmgren. Yeah, so they may end up developing their own old-fashioned big 3 organically over a period of time, right? I guess that's possible. But I mean, I think, can you do it the Pacers way? I think again, it depends on the coach you have. It depends on how nimble you are in the front office in terms of who you identify and who you put together. But yeah, the rules are set up in a way where it's going to be harder to sort of engineer these. Okay, we got our 2 superstar players. You're better off developing a versatility, depth, and just having as many good interchangeable parts as you can. I still don't think the Pacers have enough probably to win it, but they're sitting here in the NBA Finals, right? I mean, which will be starting tomorrow night. Let's get a pause in and let's talk some puck. Russo Radio will get his preview on the Stanley Cup Finals, which will Game 1, which will be on the Fan tonight. The whole series will be on our flagship. And there's also some trade rumors to discuss, and who knows what else. We'll just kind of get caught up on a number of hockey items. And if you have questions, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line for Russo, 64686. He is next.
Farm Aid 40 is coming to Minneapolis. Join Willie Nelson, Neil Young, Dave Matthews, and one of our guests right now, Russo Radio's favorite bands, Trampled by Turtles. Saturday, September 20th, Huntington Bank Stadium. Celebrate 40 years of music, food, and family farming. Enter for your chance to win a pair of tickets now on our contest page. It's KFAN.com, keyword contests.
Dateline in Edmonton for Russo Radio, who joins us right now via the Connecticut Water Systems Hotline. Stanley Cup Final start tonight. All the action can be heard right here on the flagship FM 100.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the program. Before we talk series and your view on what we might see beginning tonight, let's get to some, let's do some, as we say in the business, house cleaning related to your favorite hockey team, the Minnesota Wild. So tell me a little bit about the Rossi. You guys have a piece up via The Athletic, kind of trying to lay out the state of the state when it comes to potentially trading Rossi. We all assume that it's inevitable, that it's going to have to take place. What are you hearing? What's realistic? What kind of timetable do you think we're on here?
Yeah, I think it's, I think this is the end. I really do. And I know that's shocking the Wild fans. I remember early in the playoffs when I was writing so much about him being on the fourth line, there were people in my comment section saying that this is a non-story. And I'm like, trust me, this is a story. This is going to erupt at some point, and it has. It's a fire right now. They had another, by the way, if you need me to move, let me know, because they're, of course, testing links here.
We're good so far. Yeah, we're good.
Good. The second I start, they're like, check 1, 2, 1, 2, check. So anyway, but like the big thing is that, it started earlier this season, and to Bill's point on what he said to me the other day is that, clearly if he didn't like Rossi, he wouldn't have ever offered him that 5x5 deal, which is what sources are telling you to offer. Now, everything in the NHL, as you know, in every sport is based on comparables, and the comparables for somebody like Marco is more than that, especially on a longer type deal. They wanted a long-term deal. They turned down the 5x5. I think a bridge deal always would have made sense for him for 2 or 3 years. But then the Wild decided to throw him on the fourth line in the playoffs. And now if you're him, you can't trust that you're going to sign a 2-year contract and all of a sudden be buried in the lineup for third and fourth lines the next couple of years, not be able to produce. And now you're not going to get that long-term deals here or elsewhere that you think you command. So that's gone. And that was the conversation that I hear happened yesterday, is that essentially the counter offer to the Wild's bridge deal was back to a long-term deal, essentially 7 or 8 years. And that I don't think went over well with the Wild. They have shown no appetite that they want to do that and commit the money that they think they command, which is probably in the $6.5 to $7 million range. And because of that, and because of the fact that that his agent can shop for offer sheets starting July 1, it's now a pressure point for Bill Guerin and the Wild. They are probably going to have to trade him at some point in the next 3 weeks, unless they think that the offer sheet compensation that they can get back would be more than they could get in a trade back from Marco Rossi. So that's really the only question I have at this point is who's interested, how much are the Wild willing to get. But there's a lot of pressure here on Bill to make the right trade here, especially in light of the one center that we know that the Wild were going to pursue on July 1. Brock Nelson re-signed today with Colorado for 3 years. Now they're sort of got to look at other options, plan B, whether that's free agency or trades. And in the meantime, they're about to trade a 23-year-old center.
I want to get to a little more detail on Nelson in a minute. But can you make the argument that the team, to a certain extent, with the way, whatever we think of Rossi, the contrast between the way he was used, as you point out in your most recent piece, through most of the regular season, and the way he was used in the first-round playoff series, that they kind of backed themselves into a corner? Because I think most reasonable Wild fans would say they couldn't blame the player, in this case, or his agent, for saying, well, I don't know what I can trust at this point regarding a bridge deal, given what you've done, what you guys chose, your coach chose to do when we got to the postseason, right? I mean, that has contributed to the position, the kind of tenuous position they're in on him now. Is it not?
Yeah, 100%, because a bridge deal would have been the way out of this. Like, I totally understand where Bill Guerin does not want to commit a 7-year deal at $50 million or $55 million to Marco Rossi. I get that right now, even though that might be what the comparables say that he has earned. But then your only other option when you turn down the 5-year deal is to sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal. It made all the sense in the world. And the Wild did offer him a bridge deal the other. If you're Marco now, the whole point of a 2 or 3 year deal, when you're the whole term bridge deal is it's supposed to be this two-way street.
Yep.
The Wild are saying, continue to show us, and then we'll pay you or we'll trade you. Or from Marco's standpoint, I'm going to prove to you over these next 2 or 3 years that I could be a top 6 center for you and produce at the same level or better than I am. But if now he thinks, they just played him 11 minutes a night in the playoffs. If they think that Marco's side, a 3-year deal, it makes no sense for him to sign that, and it's a huge, huge risk for him. So the Wild have backed themselves into a corner here, where I think that they can't get a deal done. And look, I've covered a lot of nasty negotiations. We've seen 2 with Kirill Kaprizov, and they usually end up getting done. This one though, because your point of that his agent can start shopping for offer sheets. The fact that Marco's a 23-year-old center, and everybody, as we know in the league, loves centers. It just puts them in a position, no other choice but to move him now. I think that's probably been this is what I've been writing for 2 years. I don't have been convinced that he, in their system, could be a true top 2 center.
Right.
That's subject to debate. I understand why they think that, but because they've put themselves in a position here where they almost preemptively decided that he wasn't going to be able to function in the playoffs and threw him on the 4th line in game 1 and then played him there the rest of the series. It's now created this issue here where he can't sign and now they're in this position. Now they've got to win a trade, and that's pressure on Bill Guerin to get it done. And I think what some fans have, and even the fans that don't believe that they should give him $7 million. Mm-hmm. What they're having a tough time reconciling is that this is an organization for as long as I've covered them, and we know pretty much 25 years. I've only covered them for 20. Is they've long looked to draft and develop centers, and they've essentially top 6 centers in their entire history. They've drafted and developed 3 of them in the entire history of this organization. In Koivu, Rossi, and Eric Sinek, and now they're about to trade one. And so I think that a lot of fans are just really confused by this whole situation.
One thing Rossi he was available. That's another thing that it has to be factored in here, right? It's a team, as you again wrote today, a lot of injuries, and I'm not saying the players are shirkers, but I'm saying he was has been largely available, correct?
Yeah, he's played 82 games the last 2 years, and again, this is somebody that had a heart issue after COVID.
Yeah, that's right.
And on a team that, as we know, was injury riddled, all the time. 2 years, he's been the one constant. And trust me, he played through some stuff this year. He was playing through a wrist injury. He was playing through a knee injury when he blocked a shot late in the season. And he seemed to hit a wall. Like the last 10, 15 games were not very good. But I think what else, including, the people in the front office and the coaching staff, is that when Eric Sinek and Kaprizov were out from pretty much, January, Eric Sinek for on and off for all year and Kaprizov for the entire second half, there was a point where Marco Rossi they were riding him. Like, he was producing on an every night basis. He was scoring huge goals for them. 6-on-5 goals, goals. I remember the game in Montreal where they just couldn't get any offense going, and then he comes into the zone and shoots from long distance and scores. He for 20 goals and 60 points. That's not easily replaceable, whether you think that you can win with him in the playoffs or not. And so that's why there's pressure on Bill here to really win this trade, because this is somebody that at a minimum, in the regular season is going to be able to produce for you and help you get into the playoffs.
So was the team kidding itself, and Wild fans too, because we heard from them for weeks about the possibility of signing Brock Nelson. Were people kidding themselves on how realistic it really was that he was either A, going to become available, or B, that he was going to end up here?
Well, I think that, I've been saying that I thought that he was going to re-sign in Colorado. And one reason is just the pressure on Colorado to make something of this trade. I mean, they traded a first-round pick and their best prospect for Brock Nelson and obviously they bowed out in round one, and now all of a sudden you throw those two assets away, and then if you let him walk to free agency, that'd be deemed a pretty huge mistake. So I thought that he was in the driver's seat. Obviously, he gets $7.5 million on a 3-year term. I think that's way more than the Wild probably wanted to offer. So I don't begrudge him at all for signing that. So I think it's just, the Wild have always been interested in him. I thought they were hoping to get to him, but I think all bets were off once he was traded to Colorado. It almost would have been better if they went on a playoff run, and then all of a sudden, they're like satisfied and they let him go. But the second they bowed out, just knew that Ben Hankinson, who's an incredible agent, was going to be able to sort of over a barrel, and clearly he got his client an incredible contract. So now it's plan B. It's not like the Wild just had their scouting meeting going. I'm sure they've gone through every single center that's available. The problem is there's not a lot of sexy names out there. Sam Bennett, I still think is going to re-sign in Florida, and even if he becomes available, is he your true top 6 guy? Like, he's your guy that you want in the playoffs to get you somewhere.
Yeah, right.
He's not somebody in the regular season. He's scored 20 goals the last 2 or 3 years, but he's only had 50 points once. He's not your prototypical guy. He's in the perfect place for him. So I think that he resigns there, but even if he leaves, I'm sure that there's going to be other places that he's drawn to. John Tavares, all bets are off if he doesn't sign in Toronto. He is a family guy. As we all know, Minnesota is an incredible place to play. That'd probably be my top choice if I was Bill Guerin and Chris Kelleher and the gang to go out and try to get. The one that to me just keeps off jumping off the page that makes a lot of sense for the Wild, because he's going to want security, and I don't know if Dallas is willing to give it to him, is Matt Duchene. I know that Joe Smith covered a game in Dallas this year where he talked to Duchene in the locker room, and he had a lot of nice things to say about how much he enjoyed playing for John Hines in Nashville. So that just makes a lot of sense. I don't think that he'd be overly expensive, but he's not the same Matt Duchene that was a stud early in his career in Colorado. So, my guess is that they're probably going to have to go the trade route to try to remedy the situation and get a true top 6 center, or you hold your nose and re-sign Marco. I mean, you're not getting a better center than Marco right now. The one thing I think they'd love to do is I think they'd love to just get Buffalo to go a 1-for-1 swap, JJ Peterka and him. Now JJ plays wing there. But he was drafted as a center. He can play center, but is he a center? That's a big question. But I don't know if Buffalo really wants to make that type of move right now.
How long have we been talking about this team in the center position? In all seriousness, though.
Yeah,
it never. It feels like it never stops.
Yeah, and that's why it's so hard to get them, because you look at the free agents right now, and they usually, if you're good enough, and that's why, again, as I said earlier in the conversation, that's why I think some fans are just having trouble really gauging how this is at all possible, that they have a young center that they've been waiting for forever, and all of a sudden he has these 2 unreal years. Last year he's on the all-rookie team. This year he, betters himself, and yet it's probably the end of the line here. And I just think it's the pressure point. They've got to decide on a long-term deal. And they don't want to give him the money that he probably can via the comparables that are out there. But the problem is, again, as we just mentioned, not to circle back, but they had the opportunity to sign him to that bridge deal if they treated him differently in the playoffs. I'm not saying Ryan Hartman deserved to move up. He was good, but he should have been playing over Freddie Gaudreau. It just was also good business at the time. At least then you could say, hey, he played 15, 16 minutes a night, and that maybe he proves himself or he doesn't. But right at the very beginning, they showed him they didn't trust him. I mean, again, this was stuff we were hearing going into the playoffs, and then just out of nowhere, in the third period of Game 1, all of a sudden he's on the fourth line with Brazo and Trenyan, and we never saw him elevated really again. And it's not like Freddie Gaudreau had a good playoff. I don't even remember if he had a point. Maybe he had 1 assist. But his line was getting, was hemorrhaging in terms of chances against. So there's just no real true explanation that they have, verbalized explains just why, at a minimum, he couldn't play over Freddie Gaudreau in the lineup.
Is that privately, have you had conversations? Is anybody willing to revisit that and kind of look back with regret within either the coaching staff or Billy Guerin? Has there been any? I know it's like probably old news, and they may not want to go down that road. But have you gotten any sense of if we'd had a second shot at that, maybe there would have been a better way, even if we were concerned with the way he finished the season?
I think we asked at the end of exit meetings again about it,
right.
and it was a sensitive subject at the time. They've just never really made it make sense. But I don't think they can make it make sense. I think it's as simple as they just felt that he was not going to be able to function in the playoffs. Right. And they decided going into it that this is what they were going to do. This is just truly my opinion, just from reading the tea leaves, talking to people throughout, going into the year. They obviously were not happy going into the postseason. They obviously were not happy the way that he finished the regular season. But again, I think some players deserve a little equity. And the one thing about Marco is that, look, does he have the pace to break down defensemen? He's not the greatest skating guy, all that stuff, but he's got courage, man. I mean, as I wrote the other day, he's at 94th percentile in terms of shots from high danger areas in the NHL. His goals were 92nd percentile. So in other words, my point is that where he goes is to the places that you would get punished as a young guy, as an undersized guy, and yet he's still willing to go there. And so, it just seems like, in my opinion, made a mess of this. But they could fix it. Like if he's traded in a really good trade, then all of a sudden we're going to look back and sort of say, all right, they use that asset in a smart way. If some of their prospects, like Danilo Yurov, comes here and looks tremendous, then. Look, it's not like we know all the answers now. They obviously have a plan here. And again, I get it. I get why they would be hesitant to give him a 7x7 type contract right now. But in my opinion, they had a great opportunity to give him a bridge deal. And that's now probably, unless the bridge deal is some sort of money that Marco just can't pass up. They've probably blown that. Now, if all of a sudden in the next couple of weeks, Bill Guerin realizes, hey, I am not going to win this trade, and he starts looking at the free agents and starting to read the tea leaves and saying there's not something better, do you call him up and say, all right, we'll give you that 2 years at 6.8 per. Mm-hmm. And then Marco says, you know what, if they're paying me 6.8 per, they're not putting me on the freaking fourth line. Right. So I'll just sign the deal and we'll punt this. So, things can change, but right now there are definitely hurt feelings on Marco's side. I can tell you that for a fact. I think he's pretty disappointed the way this is all transpired here. And I do think that deep down he's resigned himself to thinking that he's going to probably have a new address by the end of the month. But as I said, I've covered a lot of negotiations in my 30 years covering this league that look like they were never going to be reconciled, and they at the end of the day figure it out. So we will see.
Russo Radio, Dateline.
As his agent told me again today, time will tell. So.
The Russo, of course, is in Edmonton for the Cup Finals, which start tonight. Let me give you the Kornheiser-Wilbon question that they were just debating on a certain TV show. Does Connor McDavid need the cup to validate his greatness? How ESPN-y is that one?
Yeah, that is an ESPN-y one. Look, he's validated his greatness to, I think, all of us for a long, long time. I mean, his postseason last year was just absolutely tremendous. And what he did in the Stanley Cup Final with a couple 4-point games in a row with Leon Draisaitl like an injury, to me said everything. And it's why I was one of, I think, 14 or 15 people that voted him to win the Conn Smythe, one of the few losing players in history to win the Conn Smythe trophy. But look, he's this close. And to flip it, a different way, and by the way, I respect the two of them wholeheartedly,
sure.
but to flip it a different way, I think it's very unlikely that Connor McDavid is going to get back to this position and allow his team, as long as he's healthy, not to hoist the cup. He's that motivated. And I've Florida now playoff seasons in a row. Unfortunately, because the team I seems to bow out early. So I get to be around Florida a lot. And I think the world of this team, I actually think they're better than last year. And last year, as we know, they won the Cup. But they're still going up against the best player in the world that right now is in the middle of another fabulous playoffs. But the problem right now that Florida does face is that, one, home ice advantage is on the Edmonton side as opposed to last year. And two, everybody on Edmonton is playing better than last year. The reason why and he still has 6 points, but the reason why McDavid hasn't produced at the clip that he did it last year to this point is because so many of his other teammates are producing. There's more balance. Draisaitl been unbelievable, but they're getting secondary scoring from the third and fourth lines. Their blue line has been shockingly great. I think the big test by Florida here, where I think we'll see it in game one, is I think the one game is just to pound their defensemen. Wallman, Klingberg, Kulak, and essentially take three guys that have had unbelievable playoff runs and turn them back into Wallman, Klingberg, and Kulak, and make them become the players that they actually are. And so I think that the Florida game plan is to play physical. And even if it doesn't win them tonight's game, by game 3, 4, 5, 6, they start to not want to get hit anymore, and it eventually catches up to them. So it'll be really interesting to see if Florida's style that they played against a couple heavy teams in Carolina and Toronto will be the same sort of functional success that against a team like against a team that's very, very skilled like Edmonton.
An Oilers fan asks you to give context to the importance of this series to the nation of Canada.
Yeah, I mean, look, 1993. That's 32 years ago. It's 2 less years, 2 more years than I've actually covered this league. That's the last time that Canada won a cup, and yeah, I mean, it feels like it's time. It's so funny because going into last year's playoffs, we did a lot of stories at The Athletic on this subject, and I was joking with some of my colleagues that are covering the series, and I'm like, do we just call the same people and write the same story again, or do we rerun last year's stories? But yeah, I mean, this is look, there are 7 teams in Canada, was 6 back when the Canadians last won the cup, and to go this long in a proud hockey country without ever having a parade it's tough. I mean, I was in Toronto in 2004 when they won the World Cup of Hockey, and I saw the just excitement on the streets there. And this country, even though everybody's not an Oiler fan, I think there's a lot of people pulling for this team right now. Even if you're a Leafs fan, a Canadiens fan, maybe not a Canucks or Flames fan, but you get my drift. So I think it would be an amazing thing. Especially back here. I was just talking believe it or not, a homeless guy and I were walking to the rink together. He started talking to me about where he was in 1984, the last time the Oilers, when the Oilers ended the Islanders dynasty. And he started talking to me about Billy Smith and everything. And I'm like, wow. It was actually a really enjoyable conversation until he asked me for a loonie.
Yeah, well, sooner or later, that was what Burr was going to go.
Which I gave to him, by the way.
Of course
I'm sorry, I only have American. I don't know if you can use this, but
he handled that okay.
So there we go.
Yeah, I bet you would.
Yeah, he handled it cool. He was excited.
Is this where you got all the ties last year, Russo?
Yes, that was Julie, the driver here that picked me up from the airport. Actually, at the same hotel that I'm staying at. I came back from a game, and they were sitting in my room.
I love it.
My late husband.
How fancy can your hotel be, though, in Edmonton? I mean, you're the fancy hotel guy. You're usually in the presidential suite. How's that working out for you in Edmonton?
I have a nice room. Okay. My hotel is overstuffed with people, league people.
Yeah.
There's some huge conference going around. The G7 is down in the Banff area right now. So it's an absolute zoo here right now. So like even this morning, all of a sudden there's like the charter bus and security everywhere. And it turned out to be just a bus full of diplomats that were going down to one of the lakes where they were having some of the G7 meetings.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was and they're staying all the way up here in Edmonton.
Wow. One follow-up question, actually, that I meant to get to sooner. As we got into the subject earlier today, everybody's kind of wondering whether ESPN could find a way to screw up inside the NBA, which, of course, is moving from TNT. And that led to a broader discussion that I think you and I have had before, of a belief that the TNT hockey coverage feels bigger, it feels better. Their studio panel feels bigger and better too. What has do you agree? And B, what distinguishes it from ESPN in that regard? Is there? Can you put your finger on exactly what it is, how it feels different on TNT?
I don't know. It definitely. God, I hate this subject because I'm such good friends with Steve Levy and some of the guys on ESPN.
Right.
But there's just something about TNT. They just do it perfectly. They really balance out the mix of fun with real good information. They have great people on the desk. I think Bissonnette has turned himself into just an incredible commentator, and he absolutely knows the game. And then you add guys like Henrik Lundqvist and obviously Anson Carter, and then all of a sudden they have Colby Armstrong coming in or Rick Bowness. They just have really good people that have great chemistry together, and then it's run by an absolute pro broadcaster in Liam McHugh. Like I did a huge feature on Liam during the Stanley Cup Final 2 years ago when Vegas was playing Florida, and it was a very enjoyable story to report on because it just felt, but you felt the respect from, everybody on that panel, from Anson Carter and Bissonnette to Rick Tocchet and those guys. And I just think he does a tremendous job. And that's not to say at all that Steve Levy does,
right,
because he's one of my closest friends. But there's just something about that TNT studio that just, that they just seem to do it right. Same production crew and all that stuff. And right now, to your point, it's kind of all they got right now in TNT. I know they're going to continue this broadcast from the TNT studios, the ESPN show inside the NBA, but it just right now they're going to probably even get better because they're, I got to think that TNT, who is hurting for money right now, I think they're going to probably sink even more resources into making that show better.
Have fun tonight. Thanks. Good to catch up with you. We'll be in touch as the series plays out. Thanks, Russo.
Yep, see you. Bye-bye.
Russo Radio Dateline, Edmonton, Game 1 tonight. The Stanley Cup Finals, ladies and gentlemen. All of the action of every game can be heard right here on the flagship FM 100.3 The Fan. I assume that also means via the iHeart Radio app.
You're home for hockey
as well.
As always.
Does that surprise you?
Never a doubt.
Fan. Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
Kaprizov not re-signing with the Wild, then leaving and winning a cup with a different team during the 2026-27 season.
And then on the ice, he says in Russian, anything is possible.
That's it. That'd be about it.
As he's the first person to get the cup.
Yeah, there's a lot of Kirill nominations to your questions.
Yeah, well, what about Ant? Ant's 2 years from now, he could say,
yeah, that's true, too.
I'm done.
Trade
I'm out.
me.
Right.
Not working here. Not
Trade me
work.
to Kevin Durant's team when he's 42 years old.
Or LeBron's.
Yeah, to the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah. 612 guy claims that the person I was quoting is a huge UFO nut job.
Okay.
So maybe he's not a reporter for News Nation. I don't know. We'll have to do a little more checking on that. Top 5?
Let's start with the Minnesota Twins. They got the victory. They won the battle, but did they lose the war? Because Pablo Lopez left the game with a shoulder injury, a right shoulder injury, and is expected that he will be hitting the injured list. The Twins have already, it seems like, told David Festa, you're not going to pitch for the St. Paul Saints in your next outing, so people expect him to join the club. He spent some time on the IL earlier this season and now appears to be headed back there. The Twins are back in Oakland tonight, or I should say Sacramento, playing the Oakland A's, but did move into second place in the Central Division all by their lonesome, not having won the last 2. They are 6 games behind the Tigers. In terms of tonight, it's Zebby Matthews on the mound, and I have not yet seen anything official from the Twins about Lopez, but all indications are that he will head back to the injured list.
We are, it looks to me, with our record of 33-27, we are tied for third best record in the American League right now. Astros lead the American League West with the same record. So, yeah, what's unusual once again about the standings is that the first place team in the AL Central is winning at a 645 clip. The Tigers, Sparky Anderson's Tigers, are 40-22. That's a gaudy record. That's big time, is it not?
It is, and to your point, being the Central, they have the top 2 wild card teams right now, with the Twins being 1 and just a half game behind them, the Cleveland Guardians, 32-27. So right up there in the top 4 or 5 in the American League.
Even the White Sox, by their recent standards,
surging,
are respectable at 19-42. Did they win 19 games all of last year? I'm not sure.
It was close.
It was close, yeah.
We definitely monitored it. So tonight.
So the question is the pitcher, how long he's going to be out. He's on the injured list, I assume.
I haven't seen anything official, but that's where he's headed for sure, it appears. Minnesota Lynx, you want to talk about winning percentage? Theirs is 100%. They have not lost a game this season. They are now 8-0 after routing the Phoenix Mercury, who did have some injury concerns going into the game last night, but not our problem. 88-65 was the final. Nafisa Collier with 18 points. Want to get her full line because it's always impressive here. 18 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal. I swear she had a block that she didn't get credit for. I thought I watched her get a block. Maybe somebody fouled the player before she ended up blocking the shot. But they're 8-0, and Nafisa Collier was named the Western Conference Player of the Month today.
Here's what I think we should do, because technically we're maybe in a different position than we once were. Can we not bring Ryan Donaldson out of retirement, our new Snonami guy, to do the Roar for 44, something like that? He would do that, wouldn't he?
He would do that, and he's available from what I hear.
Might as well have fun with it. I mean, it's going to realistically end sometime soon, but maybe not. By the way, the Liberty also a part of the Roar for 44. They are undefeated, and I believe their average margin of victory approaches 20 points.
Not only does it approach it,
it surpasses it?
It surpasses it. Well, their point differential is 20.6.
Wow.
The Lynx are 10.1.
A measly 10-1, huh?
Which is why we're probably still behind them in the always changing, ever-evolving athletic power rankings. I think New York is number 1, and the Minnesota Lynx are number 2.
You're probably right about that.
Paige Beckers hosts the Lynx on Sunday. It's in Dallas.
How has she been doing? I've lost touch with her since she was... Didn't we play her early?
We played her twice early.
Okay.
That's the season opener and the home opener.
Is Dallas buried early?
Yes, they are. Okay. They've got one victory.
Ooh.
Beckers.
How's she playing?
She's playing okay. She missed a couple of games with injury. She's averaging 14 points and 6 assists. So she's putting up decent numbers.
Yeah.
Especially on the assist side. But
any of the UConn players weighing in on how this is a different level and this is not going to come together in like 15 minutes? Oh, not so much.
Haven't seen much of that.
Isn't that funny?
No, haven't seen much of that.
I'll be damned.
We mentioned during the show yesterday, and we talked about it a little bit today, that Tom Thibodeau was relieved of his coaching duties after leading and guiding the Knicks to back-to-back 50-win seasons for the first time in a long time, and the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years. So, part of the reason we're here in these chairs, you go to Mike and the Mad Dog, WFAN radio, right?
Yeah, back in the day.
The heavyweights, the pioneers, they used to have a show, Mike Francesa and then Christopher Mad Dog Russo. I think Aunt Gal can probably text in right now. She probably listened to it every single day on the iHeartRadio app, back in 1987. They're not together anymore, but they still both have platforms. Mad Dog everywhere, including Sirius, and Francesa does his own podcast, even though he's retired 5 times. So today, each of them, might have been yesterday, each of them opined on who the fall guy should be for Tibbs being the fall guy, or whose call that it was. Let's have a listen, starting first with Francesa, and then it gets into Mad Dog.
I don't care what you think of Jim Dolan. I don't care what you think you've heard or what you know. This was Leon Rose's decision. This was not Jim Dolan's decision. I feel like I have that on very good authority. I feel very comfortable with that. And like I said, I tell you with complete faith in this information that this is Leon Rose's decision and nobody else's. I feel 100% confident about that.
What do you think, Mad Dog?
But this is about Dolan. Don't let anybody hear you. Don't let anybody in America hear you say, this is Leon Rose. Nonsense. And I don't want to hear from Rose. Everybody knows that Rose had nothing to do with this. This is Dolan. And this is Dolan. This is not Leon Rose. Please, don't go to Leon Rose. It's not him. This has nothing to do with Leon Rose. Leon Rose was his agent, for crying out loud. You think he's going to give him a 3-year extension last year at the end of the season, and then the agent then fire him after he gets to the conference final the next year? I mean, come on. Leon's too smart for that nonsense. There's no way he would have done that. He hired him, then he gave him a contract extension, and then they go to an Eastern Conference final for the first time in a quarter of a century, and he decides to dump him? Come on. Hey, if you believe that, you believe in a tooth fairy.
You're really convinced Dolan made this call?
Oh, absolutely.
Dolan has not.
Absolutely. I made a few calls before the show. They all told me the same thing.
Okay.
Dolan made the call.
I'll take your word for it. And
Wait. And these people have unbelievable influence within the Knick organization for the last 50 years. Dolan made the call.
So Francesa.
So Mad Dog seems to be leaning Dolan.
Mad Dog's leaning Dolan on good information.
Yeah. And
Francesa says,
good
I've got it on great information. This was Leon Rose. Dolan had nothing to do with it. I just loved it. It's so good. Because those are
irresistible force and movable object.
And they both, I'm sure, have great sources.
Yeah.
Because they're New York legends. I'm sure they know everybody that works at Madison Square Garden. But it's too bad they couldn't have argued about it on their own show. But
Dolan is the easy culprit because he has been so rippable for so long. Does that necessarily mean he did it? That he's responsible? I don't know. I don't know that that's necessarily true. If it's easier if you always want to make Dolan the villain, and largely he's made himself the villain as the owner of that team. But who knows if we're ever going to get to the bottom of the truth? I think you're going to see a lot of stories out. I'm guessing, just like you did here, they're going to demonize Tibbs. They're going to make it sound like he was throwing, computer terminals through windows, and there's all kinds of stuff behind the scenes that we don't know anything about. It's the way of the world. It's the way this always goes, depending on who gets nailed. And I'm cynical enough about it because I think if someone else gets nailed, they're just as likely. Well, actually, it's already happened with Cat.
It has.
It has started. And the irony here, of course, is Cat isn't viewed as the biggest Tibbs guy in the world.
Right.
And yet he's been demonized from the moment the series ended. And so I think we're very quickly probably going to see some of those same stories Tibbs related. It would be helpful if the is it Rose? The general manager of the team or the president of basketball operations would raise his hand. He's one of those general managers, though, who apparently never does a press conference, even end of the year press conference.
It's true.
Nothing. And to me, if it's your decision, own it. I don't think you don't even have to run from it. You may not have to get you may not want to get as specific as reporters will want you to, and that's up to you. You can answer the questions, but to me, it's let's get something straight. I did this. This was my decision. Now, the people who can't stand Dolan will say, well, he's just carrying Dolan's water. And sometimes that's true, because to this day, that's what some people think happened in Dallas.
Nico Harrison.
On the Luka trade. That he's just carrying water for the owner that wanted to make the move or didn't want to pay him the $500 million contract.
Coming up later tonight, right here on the Fan, 7 o'clock puck drop, the Stanley Cup Final, the Edmonton Oilers hosting the Florida Panthers in a rematch of the final series a year ago.
On this date in sports history, I'm actually old enough to remember it, a remarkably momentous moment that included not only a couple of controversial shots, but a referee getting assaulted by a fan. We'll play some of that back for you. Some of you will remember it, some of you won't. We'll give you details on what took place on this date in sports history. Stay tuned.